Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. President Lee Jae-myung is now back in Seoul after his trip to Japan. On the last day of his two-day trip, he met with Koreans living in Japan and thanked them for giving a helping hand when the nation was going through hardship. The U.S. Treasury Secretary gave rare verbal support for the Korean currency, explaining that the recent depreciation of the Korean won does not align with strong economic fundamentals. Following his comments, the $1 exchange rate fell sharply in overnight trading. Officials from the U.S., Denmark, and Greenland held high-level talks at the White House, but without a major breakthrough. President Donald Trump says he's not going to give up on acquiring Greenland, while Denmark pushed back, saying there is a fundamental disagreement between the two sides. We begin this morning with President Lee Jae-myung's final day of his two-day trip to Japan. Before returning home, he met with Koreans living in Japan and thanked them for their dedication and help when the nation was going through hardships, especially following the recent declaration of martial law. Our Yoon Jung-min starts us off.
A message of gratitude was prominent as the president met Koreans living in Japan's Kansai region before heading home on Wednesday.
동포 여러분께서는 88년 올림픽 때도 IMF 외환 위기 때도 역사적 고비마다 발벗고 도움의 손길을 내밀어 주셨습니다. 그리고 가깝게는 불법 계엄 사태 때 대한민국의 민주주의를 지켜내기 위해 수많은 불빛을 밝히는 데 함께 하셨습니다.
President Lee Jae-myung noted the ancient village of Asakamura in Nara and the trace of people who migrated to the Japanese archipelago from the Korean peninsula in ancient times called Torijin.
일본은 지리적으로 우리와 가까운 이웃일 뿐만 아니라 고대로부터 매우 밀접하게 연결된 곳인데 안타깝게도 한일 간의 불행한 과거 때문에 수천 년의 이 아름다운 교류의 역사가 제대로 기억되지 못하는 측면이 있습니다.
The event was joined by some 270 people, including the bereaved families of the Jeju April 3rd killing incident, and ethnic Koreans from Utoro, a small village in Kyoto Prefecture, where Koreans began to live after laborers from Korea were brought to build an airfield during Japan's colonial rule. President Lee apologized to them for what they had to go through and noted their fight against racism and efforts to defend identity.
차별과 혐오에 맞서 오사카시에 헤이트 스피치 억제 조례를 제정했고 민족학교와 민족학급을 세워 우리 말과 문화를 지키고 계승하기 위해 끈질기게 싸워주셨습니다.
He also vowed to put greater efforts in taking care of them, saying that the Koreatown in Osaka represents solidarity among people in Korea and Japan.
국민 주권 정부는 2026년 올해도 실용 외교를 통해서 동포 여러분과 함께 더 살기 좋은 대한민국, 더 존경받는 대한민국을 만들어 가도록 하겠습니다.
Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
South Korea's central bank has held its benchmark interest rate steady at 2.5%. The Bank of Korea announced the decision this morning, following the first Monetary Policy Committee meeting of the year. The rate freeze comes amid rising housing prices in the capital area and the continued weakening of the Korean won against the U.S. dollar. This marks the bank's fifth straight rate freeze since it cut rates by a quarter point in May last year. And in recent remarks, the U.S. Treasury Secretary said that the recent depreciation of the South Korean won does not align with its strong economic fundamentals. Our Kim Bo-young tells us more.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has said that the recent depreciation of the Korean won was not in line with the country's strong economic fundamentals. In the press release on Wednesday, Bessent said that he had discussed the issue during his meeting with South Korea's Finance Minister Koo Yoon-chul earlier this week. He underlined that excess volatility in the foreign exchange market is undesirable, while reaffirming that Seoul's strong economic performance, especially in key industries that support America's economy, make the country a critical partner for the U.S. Bessent's remarks are closely related to Seoul's pledge worth $350 billion of investment in the U.S., which is considered one of the main factors contributing to the weakness of the Korean won. Still, Bessent reportedly asked Koo for Seoul to fully and faithfully implement the investment agreement, saying it would further boost Korea-U.S. economic partnership and the revitalization of U.S. industrial capacity. Following Bessent's remarks, the won strengthened against the dollar in overnight trading, closing at 1,464 won per dollar. With the U.S. having a higher interest rate than Korea and expected to see economic growth that's around 0.3 percentage points stronger than Korea's economic growth rate, the exchange rate difficulties are not easy to resolve.
The U.S. economy is expected to maintain solid growth, supported by AI investment, tax cuts, and interest rate reductions.
Seoul is in a difficult place regarding the weak Korean won, as the U.S. has already rejected South Korea's proposal of requesting an unlimited bilateral currency swap. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
So the Bank of Korea has decided to keep its key interest rate on hold this morning amid soaring housing prices and a weakening Korean won against the U.S. dollar. For more on this, we're joined today by Professor Kim Yong-jin, professor at Seogang Business School. Professor Kim, thanks for joining us this morning.
Morning. Pleasure to be here.
So the Bank of Korea has decided to keep its key interest rate unchanged. And this was something that was widely expected, right? What's behind the central bank's decision and how will this affect the market?
Well, as you mentioned, it is kind of market consensus. The weakened Korean won has limited room for easing. The $1 exchange rate is over 1,450, which is very still high. Korean won has weakened nearly 2% during the first 2 weeks of this year, which is increasing the risk of higher consumer price and stoking inflation concerns. Moreover, despite the government effort in controlling the supply, expectations for house prices, particularly for Seoul apartment prices, are still elevated at the moment. These are the key reasons why Bank of Korea has decided to keep its interest rate unchanged. The impact of holding the key interest rate may not affect economic condition much more in Korea, but we'll see how it happens in the near the first quarter.
Right, and still some say the difficulty the South Korean economy faces could sort of justify a cut in the benchmark rate. What's your take on this?
Yeah, that is true too. Economic difficulties Korea face, particularly weakening domestic demand and slow growth, have been cited by some analysts and international bodies like the OECD as the justification for cutting the benchmark interest rate to stimulate the economy. Growth forecast has been 1.8 to 2%, which is a little bit better than that of 2025, but still quite low. Private consumption and construction investment have been sluggish, which point to a need for stimulus to boost internal economic activities. Inflation has generally remained stable and open near or below the Bank of Korea's 2% target. The most important is that Korean economy faces long-term structural problems, including an aging population, low productivity in certain sectors, and high household debt. Despite this argument, the Bank of Korea has opted to hold the rate steady, as aggressive cut could exacerbate the existing financial stability risk. I agree to their reasoning.
I see. And while that's happening, the Korean won is sliding toward its weakest point in decades. And after the U.S. Treasury chief gave a rare verbal support to the Korean currency, the won gained as much as 1% overnight. What's your outlook for the $1 exchange rate through 2026?
Well, and I believe that the $1 exchange rate in 2026 generally point toward continued weakness. It's just like in most economies, to expect the won to average above 1,400 won per dollar, potentially ranging from 1,400 to 1,451 due to strong dollar demand and elevated Korean risk premiums and potential policy uncertainty. During the first half of the year will be around, 1,450, and during the second half, it might be around, 1,350 to 1,400. When considering the supply and demand for US dollars to invest in the United States. For companies, they need a lot of dollars to invest in the United States, and also individual investors requires much more money, much more dollars to invest in US stocks.
Right, and speaking of investors, Korean stocks continue to rally, and the Kospi has climbed above 4,700 points, and it's now very close to the 5,000 mark, and that's a level that President Lee Jae-myung said he aimed to achieve during his term since his presidential campaign. What's driving this surge, and what makes the Korean market so attractive to foreign investors?
Yeah, it is amazing to watch that the benchmark Kospi climbing faster than expected toward the unprecedented 5,000 point, right? Everybody in Korea excited. As some analysts expect, it might reach the milestone as early as this month. This accelerated, rally may surprise even President Lee Jae-myung, who promised the benchmark point during his presidential campaign. There are some reasons which are driving this bullish market. There have been proper changes in the commercial law, regulation systems of the stock market, and the taxation on capital gains, driven by the ruling Democratic Party and the government. These measures are expected to improve the transparency of the market and help minority shareholders taken well care of. Even further, the trade deal with the U.S. was well closed. Industries including semiconductor, defense, and shipbuilding are still hot, and the mood in general is very good. So foreign investors may feel Korean market very attractive due to those factors.
I see. All right, Professor Kim, thank you so much for your insight and time this morning. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he's not ruling out any options to acquire Greenland, calling the Arctic island vital to U.S. national security and missile defense. Denmark is pushing back, with its foreign minister saying Copenhagen and Washington hold sharply different views on Greenland's future. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
President Donald Trump says he's not backing away from the idea of acquiring Greenland, telling reporters Wednesday that he is not going to give up options and that he believes something will work out. Trump made the remarks in the Oval Office during an unrelated event just hours after the Denmark and Greenland held talks in Washington with Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. The meetings were aimed at managing rising tensions over the future of the Arctic territory, which is a semi-autonomous part of Denmark and a member of the NATO alliance. When pressed by reporters, Trump declined to say whether he is considering the use of force to take control of Greenland. However, he again argued that the United States has a strong national security interest in the island.
I'm not going to give up options, but it's very important. Greenland is very important for the national security, including of Denmark.
He described Greenland as vital to America's Golden Dome missile defense program, which is designed to track and intercept long-range missile threats. Trump also said that U.S. control of Greenland will strengthen American security in the Arctic, a region that is becoming increasingly important as global competition intensifies. Denmark has firmly rejected Trump's position. Danish Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen said Wednesday that the U.S. president has made his view clear and that the two sides have a different position.
The discussions focused on how to ensure the long-term security in Greenland. And here our perspectives continue to differ, I must say. The president has made his view clear, and we have a different position.
He stressed that Greenland's future must be decided by Greenland and Denmark, not by outside pressure from Washington. However, the Danish foreign minister said the two sides have agreed to set up a high-level working group that will meet in the coming weeks to see whether a common path forward can be found. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, here in South Korea, unionized bus drivers in Seoul have reached a wage agreement with management, ending a two-day strike that caused widespread commuter disruption across the capital. Seoul city officials said the deal was finalized late Wednesday during a special mediation session at the Seoul branch of the National Labor Relations Commission, following marathon overnight negotiations. The strike began Tuesday after pay talks broke down, marking the first walkout by Seoul bus drivers in 2 years. At the height of the disruption on Wednesday morning, just 562 of more than 7,000 intercity buses were operating, roughly 8% of normal service. Full service resumed across Seoul starting Thursday morning. And there's a new travel trend among visitors to Korea. Tourists are heading to local cafes and trying out the latest trending food that have gone viral on social media. More visitors are seeking out places that Koreans enjoy in their everyday lives, something that appears to have been fueled by the global popularity of K-content. Our Cho Young-eun has the story.
For Holly and Macy, it's their very first trip to Korea. And on the way to their next stop, they pause at a street side instant photo booth. Once a familiar activity for young Koreans, instant photo booths have now become a must-do experience for foreign visitors, capturing memories the local way. Their day continues at a beauty retailer Arirang, where personalized color consultations, skin analysis, and tailored recommendations offer a closer look at Korea's beauty culture.
We want to take back some beautiful skincare to Australia.
Yes.
Everyone here has incredible skin.
Yes, we're trying to meet a lot of people and asking local people for their recommendations.
Beyond Seoul's temples and palaces, more and more tourists are looking to experience how Koreans enjoy their daily lives, from visiting local cafes to eating the latest trending food. This neighborhood cafe has drawn visitors from around the world, all eager to try Korean-style salt bread that's gone viral on social media.
I chose this delicious salt bread bakery because it's really popular on social media, and I also love K-pop.
Yes, I think they're coming in greater numbers. There are a lot of Japanese people, a lot of people from Taiwan, and even a lot of people from New Zealand. So I am sensing the new trend.
From lining up at popular bakeries to enjoying local food like gomtang or beef bone soup, travelers are immersing themselves in Korea's everyday food culture. The Korea Tourism Organization says the shift is a natural result of K-content's global reach.
It seems to be a natural phenomenon resulting from Korean lifestyles being shared with the world in real time through K-content. Tourism itself is continuing to shift away from simply sightseeing toward more hands-on, experience-based, everyday life activities.
As Korea's daily life itself becomes a destination, traveling like a local is redefining what it means to visit Seoul. Cho Young-eun, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. In Iran, authorities have temporarily closed most of the country's airspace on Wednesday, signaling heightened security concerns as a deadly crackdown on nationwide protests continue. A notice posted on the Federal Aviation Administration website said Iran barred all flights except approved international arrivals and departures starting at 5:15 p.m. Eastern Time, with the restrictions set to last at least until 7:30 p.m. and possibly longer. Meanwhile, the U.S.-based human rights activist news agency reports that at least 2,500 demonstrators have been killed over the past 17 days of unrest. The group said more than 18,000 people have been detained. It is relying on activist networks inside Iran for those figures, as independent verification remains impossible due to a nationwide internet blackout. Iran's judiciary has publicly called for rapid trials and possible executions of those arrested, warning swift punishment to deter further protests. Against that backdrop, President Donald Trump said he had been told the executions would stop, though he said he would need to confirm this. The United States will halt immigrant visa processing for citizens of 75 countries over concerns that applicants could rely on public assistance after entry. The U.S. State Department on Wednesday ordered consular officers worldwide to suspend immigrant visa applications starting January 21st, although a full list of countries has yet to be released. The move follows a broader order issued in November tightening public charge rules and builds on immigration and travel restrictions covering nearly 40 countries, including Brazil, Iran, Russia, and Somalia. The suspension does not apply to non-immigrant visas such as tourist or business travel, but a separate directive instructed embassies to screen many temporary visa applicants for potential public benefits use, placing the burden of proof on applicants. In northeastern Thailand, at least 32 people were killed on Wednesday when a construction crane collapsed onto a moving passenger train. According to officials in Nakhon Ratchasima province, 64 people were injured, some critically, and 3 passengers are reportedly missing. The train and its 171 passengers were traveling from Bangkok to Ubon Ratchathani when the crane fell from an elevated section under construction and derailed several carriages. Authorities have launched an investigation and ordered work to be suspended at that site, part of a high-speed rail project intended to link Thailand with neighboring countries. A Chinese safety app bluntly named it Are You Dead has surged in popularity as millions of people living alone shared it online. The app prompts users to check in regularly and automatically alerts a designated emergency contact if no response is recorded for consecutive days. Developers announced Tuesday that the spike in downloads forced them to introduce a subscription fee to cover operating costs. The company also announced it will rebrand the app globally as China sees a sharp rise in one-person households, estimated at above 200 million.
Rain or snow continues across many parts of the country today. The precipitation will be light. Snow is expected for the colder areas with up to 5 centimeters of snowfall expected. But most of the rain and snow should taper off in the afternoon, but icy patches may remain on the roads. Please take extra care. This morning was way warmer than usual, and instead of the cold, air quality will be the main concern today. Yellow dust that originated yesterday will gradually move into the country, and some western regions could see levels reach a very bad level by tonight. And this afternoon, Seoul will be getting up to 8 degrees. Gwangju, Busan both topping out at 15 degrees Celsius under sunnier skies in southern parts of Korea. Meanwhile, dry weather alerts remain in place for the East Coast. That no severe cold is expected through Monday. Then a wintry mix on the same day will bring an intense cold spell to the country.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.